Expected to start school today, millions more returning to the classroom. The Department of Basic Education says the first day of school always brings challenges. In Gauteng, there's still around 16,000 unplaced learners, but in most schools, learning was to begin in earnest. Well, it comes as South Africa is still digesting the matric results for the class of last year, and they seemed very good. But questions have been asked about the silent masses, the children who start in grade 1 like many today, but don't complete their schooling. Equal Education says the annual matric pass rate announcement is a misleading fanfare. Well, let's discuss. We're joined by the General Secretary for Equal Education, Noncedo Madube-dube. Noncedo, thank you for being with us. Firstly, do you share the Minister's concern about vandalism? I mean, schools burning down when we already have huge problems with infrastructure.
Absolutely. So we were invited to the minister's announcement of results a couple of days ago. One of the things she did in her speech is to appeal to school communities to leave schools alone in the plight for social justice issues or other community-related issues around the country. And we thoroughly and absolutely agree with that. But we need to also not simplify the optics around what is happening in schools, because we know and we all recognize and believe and say that schools are mirrors of our communities. So we need to understand that when people or young people in particular do those kinds of things of vandalism and burning schools, it speaks to the type of desperation that exists in young people in this country today. And there's a number of issues that contribute to that. First of all, it's the youth unemployment rate. So and now you must consider the Equal Education's matric statement when you think about what I'm saying to everyone, is that if you consider how basic and poor basic education or the foundation phase education is, it doesn't help anyone by the time they reach grade 9, for example, feel confident in the education system in the traditional sense or in participating in it and hoping to get their matric and able to access a better job and a better life in their future for their family. So those are the conditions that you're learning under. But also you see that as you head towards your matric, the stumbling blocks to you getting that flourishment or fulfillment of a really quality and equitable education system in a democratic South Africa is poor. And no resources or support is offered to your teachers and your entire school community, it becomes difficult not to want to react in that way in sight of knowing that you probably won't pass. But all of those conditions aren't created by you and your willingness to learn as a young person. So, I mean, simplifying it and going, you must arrest kids or enter them into a criminal justice system on the basis of them experiencing such deep oppressions and hardships in their own communities, but also related to their schools, is sort of like a tough thing to comprehend with. And I think the minister, when addressing these issues, both provincially and nationally, they need to take these things into account and be accountable in some ways to these types of issues as well.
So you mean that schools become a target for the outrage? Let's just be honest about the infrastructure. We're talking about laptops having a big debate, but there are still students going to school today where there are pit toilets, aren't there?
I want you to say that louder, as a matter of fact. So one of the worrying things that came from the announcement that the minister made a couple of days ago, and the input made there by the deputy minister, is this wall-to-wall execution or promotion of ICT in schools. And Equal Education has been for a while now looking at this ICT schools debacle, and especially in the Gauteng area. And you find a lot of urban provinces want to invest a lot of money in this kind of sort of initiative, and we get it. We want to be prepared for the fourth industrial revolution, things of that nature. The world is ahead of us in many ways. But we must also recognize the fact that most schools, and especially in rural provinces where they want to start and roll out this program, don't have the basic resources to be able to teach in quality environments. So things like pit latrines, infrastructure backlogs are atrocious. We know today that there's still well over 400 schools elsewhere in the country outside just the Eastern Cape that are still made out of inappropriate structures, mud, asbestos, corrugated iron, and things of that nature. So, I mean, tablets and smart boards are like the third phase of what needs to be happening in our education system at the moment in order to be able to make sure that people, first of all, feel safe and comfortable in their learning environment. I'm not even yet addressing the overcrowding and those types of issues that are happening, in particular in urban provinces, but rather just the physical infrastructure that's affecting learners and teachers alike, and the ability to be able to feel like they can teach and run curriculum in a way.
But Noncedo, I don't know if you saw, but Panyaza Lesufi, the Gauteng MEC, was here on this show yesterday defending the laptops. Remember, they came top of the class. He attributes that to ICT. And he did say it's saving money. If you look at textbooks, the transport, the printing, Surely we can do both. We can push ICT and hold government to account for infrastructure.
Yeah, but the thing is that if they were working parallel, and there was an active study to show the correlation, then we'd be having a different kind of conversation. So what we're saying is that don't not do the ICT, but don't wall-to-wall schools that still have other infrastructural issues or supports for teachers lacking. So, for example, I think it was 2 years ago when Equal Education visited a school called Gauteng in Soweto, and we found 2 standing buildings, right? So the one was for junior grades. This is a high school, and one for senior grades. The senior graded classroom had sort of like contemporary type safety mechanisms to keep safe the smart boards and the tablets and things of that nature. But the second building for the junior grades, you could actually shake with your hands. So the caretaker said if there's rough winds or hail and the type of rough weather that Joburg gets during winter, most learners didn't come to school, and there was high levels of absenteeism because learners were afraid for their lives. And this is the type of thing that we're speaking about. And the principal was saying, look, we've got a construction project that's been sitting on my table for years now, and there hasn't been any response or people coming on site beyond presenting project plans to the principal to actually do the work. And there were numerous, a lot of sort of container classrooms on the outside of the school as well. So we're saying if you're going to say do them at the same time, then you need to really be pushing on the other, which is the basic and most necessary resources, before you start concentrating and putting huge amounts of money into the ICT in particular.
All right, sure. Noncedo, we're running out of time, so I want to ask you about some pictures doing the rounds on social media suggesting that some schools are racist, are segregating, putting black students to one side. Have you heard anything? We're looking into some of the claims today. Have you heard anything about racism at schools today?
Nothing's come in at Equal Education, and I've been watching that as well, and I know that it's a dispensation that exists in our country at the moment, but I'm also worried about sort of like old images recirculating to be able to make those kinds of points across. But personally at Equal Education, no one's sort of called in, and I know that the country feels that we're accessible enough to be able to come in and make these kinds of assertions and get support from us or the Equal Education Law Centre.
All right, so SABC will continue to verify those. I think I can throw in one more question then. You say that the matric results are completely misleading, some research out. Just tell us your analysis now that we've, as South Africa, had time to digest those matric results.
So, when we know that at least 12% of young people don't make it to grade 9, right? So that means already the class of 2030 is in stake as it starts at grade 1 today. And we also know that 40% of those that start grade 1 don't make it to matric. Then the assertion of over 79% of learners having passed matric is a poor one, because a lot of people then fall away on the journey to matric. And what we've been saying in our statements, and not just this year, is that when the Department of Education speaks about matric results or celebrates the class of that matric class, or class of 2018, for example, they need to then also case in point and speak strongly around the foundation phase level of education. They need to speak strongly about what they're planning to do around early childhood reading or early grade reading, as opposed to coming in and speaking about rolling ICTs out in schools and improvements in different provinces that don't match up or correlate with how many people have then dropped off in prerequisite years. And it's also something that we're thinking of celebrating or thinking about in a larger scheme around the retention of some learners that have been progressed into grade 11, and thinking about systems and a job well done really to the Western Cape for having the highest numbers of those types of pupils being supported and helped in order to make it to matric. Those are the things that we need to be talking about or hearing more of as we speak about what matrics or the class of a 2018 or 19 have then achieved, and what it shows really about the state of education in our country. Because it's absolutely misleading to say, look, 79% of folks pass, and therefore it's representative of how well the system is doing, because there are many hardships and fails in and along the way.
All right, thank you very much, Noncedo Madubedube, General Secretary for Equal Education. We will be speaking to the Education Minister, Angie Motshekga, later, bringing up all these various issues. Over to